始对，对，好，对，好。各位新闻总裁、田主任、各位贵宾、各位女士、各位先生，由美国全国民主基金会与我国国家政策研究中心所共同举办的第三波民主化研讨会，今天在中华民国台北市举行。来自世界近30个国家与地区的政治领袖和学术界精英，怀抱着崇高的民主信念，在未来10天内，将与本地学者专家同聚一堂，针对民主政治的实践经验与发展前景进行深入研讨。本会奉邀至此，深感荣幸，再次仅代表中华民国政府与人民对本次会议的举行表示祝贺之意，也对远道而来的各国贵宾尽致欢迎之诚。去年1994年，前苏联总统戈巴切夫先生应邀前来我国访问，与本人会见。我们针对苏联改革的经验交换意见。当时邓辉说，政治改革和经济改革是一组2元联立反正史，意思是政治改革和经济改革缺一不可。只注意一方面，孰能有成，至于这一组2元联立反正史，应先解哪一史？这因各国特殊条件以及面临的问题而不同的。以台湾的经验来说，显然是经济改革作为先导，在其他的相关的时机与条件一应具备之时，政治改革就水到渠成了。当时本人也特别和戈尔巴乔夫先生说，在苏联的这个是2元这个联立反正史里面，事实上可能在苏联的情况呢变数太多变数，所以叫做 over identification， 可能没有办法得到了相当好的一个解答。2国反正是不是哪一个先来哪一个后来的问题，可能变数本身的 identification 相当的困难。我特别要注明就是把这些问题和他来谈谈一些问题。政治的改革和发展，的确是不能单靠经济变革的这个支持的。特别本人也强调了，贵国苏联的整个的历史，长期的大的皇帝制度之下，接过来就是这个是独裁的，这个是苏联的共产的主义，老百姓从来都没有一个这个真正的民主的一个这个修炼以及这个是习惯，这问题是相当复杂。所以今天本人特别要强调，政治的改革和发展的确是不能单靠经济变革的支持，而是要看个别的情况而来定的。所谓政治改革和发展，是一种庞大复杂的一个社会工程，不但接受该社会里各种团体力量，也和该社会的文化传统息息相关。政治发展和文化的关联，我再借用代数的观念来表达的话，就像函数，就是 f， 是一个这个事情政治的改革的话呢，指这个是方形 of x， 就是 这个是 X 代表了这个文化内涵的不同，政治发展的走向和结论也就不会一样的。因为我们要这个政治改革的过程中是人来做的，人的根本的思想和他的生活的观念，事实上相当影响到整个的改革的一个做法。过去从历史文化来讨论中国政治发展的学者，一般都希望根据一些历史的资料，建构某种的理论，以结束政治现状的问题，进而预测未来的发展。譬如有些学者会说，中国社会的传统重视权威、集体性强，缺乏个人主义，不尊重人权，所以中国政治的发展必脱离不了威权主义的色彩文本。最有名就是马克思韦伯先生的道教与这个儒教，他是里面写出来，他研究的就是完全是封建的皇帝时代的中国的儒教，是他的研究的中心。所以我们就会知道了，可能对中国整个的了解是文不对题的样子。可能中国的历史是5000年，不是2500年的最近的这一段的这个历史。这一类的意见当然可以做一个学术问题深入的分析，但也要对世界情况能做成这个合理的解释，才能为人来接受。以最近不到5年内台湾政治的种种发展而论，过去一般以传统历史文化为依据的见解，显然无法圆满的结束。所以，我们应该先理清政治发展的现实，再探索其文化的传统，这样子才可能比较客观地理清两者之间的关联性。当然，政治改革和发展的成功条件是很复杂的，我们不会把文化传统当作唯一重要的因素。政治学者大概都承认，政治体制不是抽象的概念。譬如民主，虽然大原则是相通的，但具体的内容以及落实的方式，简单一句话就是连宪法内容每一个国家都有不一样。其实，在西欧的这种文化非常的这个接近，和美国希望就是文化接近的国家，这种文化同质性比较高的地区也有相当不同的这个差异。这些差异正是各个国家和社会之历史条件和文化传统的差异。所以，我想借这个学术讨论会的场合，来以台湾政治改革和发展为例，在经济性的解释之外，再进一步提出历史文化的说明，从学术的观点请各位专家来指教。本人的这些关心指教，不过是非常的初步，非常的这个外行。这是希望大家来多多指教，共同大家来探讨。台湾属于中国文化大体系中的一部分。过去2000年，中国的政治制度是以皇帝为首的中央集权政府，缺乏西方式的这个是民主，没有议会的制度，这些都是历史的事实。抗日战后，中国共产党扩大叛乱，政府在这个是民国37年1948年办行了动员抗战时期临时条款。次年，政府拨迁来台，在中国共产党的威胁之下，临时条款继续长达43年之久。到民国80年，就是1991年再废止。临时条款限制中华民国宪法所赋予人民的权利。中华民国成为一个处于战争状态的戒严国家。在临时条款废止5年不到的时间内，中华民国进行了一连串的政治改革， 包括修订中华民国宪法、终止动员戡乱时期、完成第1届中央民意代表全面的退职、改选国会议员、确立地方自治和总统、副总统自荐民选的法源，中华民国已是成为主权在民的民主国家。现在的中华民国已经走上了民主政治，没有绝对的政治的权威，也没有不合理的政治的垄断。社会上存在着多种不同的政治的主张，形成各种政党基本上都能秉持理性的态度，公平合理的竞争，以争取人民的支持。人民也能够在法律的范围内运用他们的自由的权利。中华民国在创造了经济奇迹之后，又创造了政治的奇迹。外国有些评论家称赞这是一场的宁静的革命。中华民国承继了2000年之久的皇帝制度的传统，再加上40年动员戡乱的艰难的背景，却能在和平中完成这一番历史性的政治改造的工程大业。这个事实值得人文、社会、科学者重视，更为相信成功原因多层次的，而且每层次的因素也都可能有他们不可和解的药用。现在我想从中国文化所讲的政府与人民的关系，看古典政治的思想在台湾政治发展中所发挥的作用。民主政治是以全民大众为主题的政治，其终极目的在于缔造人民最大的福祉。历史上这种理念虽然以多种不同的形式来落实，但都未背离主权在民的原则。离开主权在民，就不可能有民主政治。但民主理念与政治形式之间是存有某种这个差距的。自从人类形成比较庞大复杂的群体以后，公共事务便逐渐归给少数人来承担，不可能由全部社群成员来负责的。换句话说，少数人成为统治者，多数人是被统治者。统治者有权利支配更多的资源，被统治者则相反。从理论来说，这似乎是政治形势不可避免的走向。人民不能管人民，必须由少数的统治者来进行，因为人民更不可能直接来管理国家的事务，所以特立君子政治以后的共和国家，只能实行所谓简洁民主，就近拥有公权力执行公务的政府和国家主权之所有者的人民之间应有怎么样的关系才合理？这是大家所共同关心的问题。现在世界上的民主政治，如同其他的政治体制，都是历史发展的结果。恐怕没有两个国家是一模一样。以比较上轨道的国家来说，他们发展的过程有的比较温和，有的相当激烈，但基本概念都建立在人民与政府的对立关系上。因为今日西方民主政治大抵都是从君主政治转变来的，人民向国君争取权利，自然就对立。所以讨论民主政治，不能离开各国历史的实际的情况。回顾西欧的历史的经验，被统治的人民透过各种的方式执行统治的政府，争取到更多的权利。在这些过程中，有的国王走上了断头台，有的国王流亡，有的国王 沦为虚伪的君子。最后的共同现象是，人民提升为国家的主人。欧洲近代民主发展史显示，人民争取权利采用的手段，以温和着国家的政体与制度的转型，亦是以置换而来稳当。相反的手段激励着转型快速但都动荡，对社会的冲击，后者当然远比前者为大。台湾过去5年来的政治改革，无论放在2000年的中国历史和80多年的中华民国历史来看，都可以称得上是非常剧烈而快速的变动。但台湾付出的代价却极为低微。我们的经济持续成长，社会持续建设，文教持续发展，人民的生活更为富裕。其中原因是什么？等为常想，以人民与政府对立的规律，是不能圆满地结束台湾近5年来政治发展经验的。邓辉认为合理的答案就在文化传统。那时存在一个民主社会比较底层的因子，如果不仔细去观察，往往会被埋没在热闹的权力斗争下面。从民所欲是现在民主政治最简明的注解，而这种主政者的理念，在我国古文化里面确实都手可得的。充分证明当时的政治理想，基本上肯定政治的终极目的是要达成人民的意愿，也就是现代民主政治所强调的政府的功能。这些文献最早的一部分是出现在西元前21世纪大禹王时代，主管华丽的歌谣，对禹王说：“老天爷会听会看，但他的听看是来自人民。老天爷会扬善真恶，但是他的扬善真恶是来自人民的。天聪明，自我民听；天明为，自我明为。”类似的话在西元前11世纪周武王出兵讨伐周王的时也曾经被提出来。今年6月，邓辉在国内大学演讲的时候特别提到“民之所欲，天必从此”的古训。这一句话是据说是西元前11世纪武王出兵前宣誓的事实，无疑与前面所提到的高尧对禹王所说的这个话是很接近的。为更具体的意义，老天既遵从民意，民意有了表达的这个对象，人民的主动性就会更强，而不是消极的反映民意而已。西元前3世纪的孟子也曾经说：“民意义之兮，所恶而是恶也。人民想要的就给他们，人民不要的、险恶的，是千万不要降价在他们的身上。能够这样子，就能得民心，就能赢得人民的支持，就能获得真正的机会。所以，中国古典智慧体现执政的人，要时时刻刻体察民意，顺从民意。其实这就是主权在民的实践。政府与人民互为一体，也是我国固有的政治理念。 古典政治思想家认为，政府与人民是和谐一体的，而不是对立的两极。7年前，7世纪周王朝有一位史官艺术下士说：“如果民众不拥戴国王，要拥戴谁呢？国王如果没有民众支持，也无法守住国家。纵非炎火，何待？后会中无以筹邦。”另外，《尚书》也有类似的话。后来的孔子左右列国，奉劝执政的人要实施仁政。孟子也倒是推广王政，都是主张透过实政的作为，拉近政府与人民的距离。战国时代，儒家以人体，譬如说，人民与国，国君作心，国君与人民作体。民以君为心，君以民为体。表面上看来，身体随心所好，似乎人民也顺着国君。但深一层来看，心靠身体的保护才得安全，心也会随身体的受伤而受伤的。就像国君和人民是一体存在的关系。从民所欲，或是政府与人民一体，都是今天民主政治的理念的基础。虽然早已出现在我国先民的政治活动中，可惜因为后来封建思想的形成，走上了质疑思想的发展轴上。虽然如此，但是这个理想在中国数千年历史中始终没有消失过，一直是中国人民不断追求的目标。中国历代皇帝无论多么专制自私，几乎没有一个人敢明目张胆的排斥民意，没有人敢公然说为政不必以人民福祉为依归。共产党如此，都是以人民福祉为归做他们的口实，可见这些思想的影响力是一直存在的。今天我们把中国固有的文化中崇尚民意、主张政府与人民互为一体的政治理念注入现代民主制度中，相信会给民主政治增加新的活力。登辉深信中华民国最近5年来政治的改革，所以能够顺利达成。文化是最重要的因素。登辉近来提出经营大台湾、建立新中原的方针，相信在经济奇迹和政治奇迹相互辉映的台湾经验之中，其深层处确实包含着深厚的文化的传统。这个文化传统应该延寿到4年前3世纪末皇帝制度形成以前的古典时代，那时还没有受到后世帝王政治的污染，带有清新朴素合理的中原的文化。古典的中原文化与我们相差2000年以上，当然不可能原封不动地搬过来，必须经过一番创造性的转化。所谓新中原的新，就是创造性的转化，是我们及日后文化建设的方向。登辉认为，清新朴素的古典文明必将我们处之不尽、用之不竭的思想的前沿。各位女士、各位先生，世界各地崇尚民主政治的精英人士前来出席这一次的会议，无疑是第3波民主化浪潮的开花结果，使你我之间形成一种超国界、超文化的紧密结合，也是一种因为热爱民主政治而现身的紧密的结合。登辉希望，而且相信，这样的紧密结合将有助于增进我们彼此的共识和友谊。 我们衷心期待与大家共同努力，进行理论学术与经验事务上的精进提升，以建立一个真的完全属于民主政治的世界。也衷心期待大家从这一次会议所带回去的，不只是对民主政治发展有更进一步的评估与了解，更包含我们国家和人民应帮国际社会给予我们公平待遇的热望。同时，欢迎这样子具有意义的国际会议能够经常在这里来举行。最后，艺术会议圆满成功，各位先生、各位女士健康快乐，谢谢大家，谢谢大家。
Please rise.
I don't see a lot of indication that there's a great likelihood that it won't happen. Most certainly the Central European and Eastern European countries. And so, as I said, I'm not that much concerned about the red return, but some people are. I wouldn't try to explain the difference between Taiwan and Singapore in terms of Confucianism or culture or economic development. Since both countries have become very wealthy countries, Singapore even wealthier than Taiwan. I would explain it through political leadership. Lee Kuan Yew does not want to have a democracy in Singapore, and President Lee Teng-hui doesn't want to have a democracy here in Taiwan. And hence, it seems to me that is the variable which has to explain the differences in the political development of these two countries. When I was saying earlier that when Lee Kuan Yew disappears from the scene, Singapore, if it remains authoritarian, will undoubtedly become corrupt and more brutal than it is, and a less and less attractive looking place. I think it is more likely, however, given the nature of Singaporean society and the fact that this is a very wealthy middle-class society involved in every way with the global community, I think it is much more likely that Singapore will move in a democratic direction and become more like Taiwan after Lee Kuan Yew passes from the scene.
Of the conference, challenges of democratic consolidation. I should like to mention in the beginning that one of the fringe benefits of organizing or hosting such a conference is to enable me to be able to sit with the great institutions in the field of the study of democratic transition and democracy. This conference will address many aspects of democratic consolidation. They are arranged in topical formats with special references to certain geographic regions in the world. Undoubtedly, each panel will have theoretical as well as empirical analysis. However, this particular panel is intended to provide an overriding analytical framework for the studies of democratic consolidations. We are indeed very fortunate to have three of the leading scholars in the field of democracies and democratic development who are with us in the panel here. Professor Lane, to the extreme right of Yale University, and Professor Stephens, and now President of the Central European University, previously Yale University, or still with Yale University. To my left is Professor Robert Dahl, who serves as a commentator. these three panelists are undoubtedly among the leading authorities in the world. In the 1960s, when I studied in the United States under Professor Austin Rennie, who was previously editor of American Political Science Review and later president of the American Political Science Association. I understand that Professor Rennie was a student of Professor Dow at Yale. So you can see the distance between Professor Dow and I, both intellectually and also in terms of time spent. We have arranged for this panel roughly about 1 hour and 15 minutes in order to have sufficient dialogue between the panelists and a large number of extremely qualified individuals in the audience. We have asked the panelists to confine their presentation to 15 minutes for each person. I understand that the paper is to be co-presented by Professor Lynch and President Stephens. And I understand that between the two, they have worked out an arrangement so that each of them will have about 15 minutes, although I was told that Professor Lin usually would need more time than that.
Share the presentation of the paper, which is very long and which we will not read. I don't like to read papers. And we also want to introduce some multiple dimensions to be a little bit responsive to what we are learning at this meeting, in both the sessions and the conversations. The paper does start with the topic of the printed version that you have, with the topic of consolidation. But in our book, which we wrote together, Stefan and myself, we deal with many more problems, and we start dealing with the transition. And I want to make very clear that there can be no consolidation if you don't have a democracy. And that therefore the criteria for consolidation apply to an already existing democratic political system. And that may not be clear from the version that you have. So I want to emphasize the various dimensions. The first one is that we should be very clear that liberalization of an authoritarian regime is not the same than the transition to democracy. There may be considerable levels of liberalization in a society, tolerance for trade unions, letting exiles return, letting politicians get together and talk about what the future should be. That is not democratization. It is not even the beginning of a transition. A transition is a process which starts when those in power accept the idea that there should be a devolution of power to the people through free, competitive elections. This may be forced on them by a coup, by a revolution, although there are few cases of transition by revolution, and they are dubious because they generate, both coups and revolutions generate provisional governments, which have no democratic legitimacy, although they might be committed to democracy, until those who had such governments are really elected. They may be started from above by the regime itself. But in any case, this process starts with a commitment to a transition to a democratic government. There is an interim period, which is a difficult and dangerous period on which I have jointly with Yossi Schein written a book, part of the book, and there is necessity to define here clearly that a democratic transition is complete when sufficient agreement has been reached about political procedures to produce an elected government. When a government comes to power that is the direct result of free and popular vote, when this government de facto has the authority to generate new policies, and when the executive, legislative, and judicial power generated by the new democracy does not have to share power with other bodies de jure and in some cases de facto. That's why many of the Central American transitions to democracy are extremely dubious, because de facto and sometimes de jure the military continue exercising considerable power. So let's be very clear that the transition to democracy has to assure that power emerges from free competitive elections and that there are no reserved powers of non-democratic bodies in any policy area of the society. This means obviously also the clear subordination of the military. Secondly, it is important in our definition to reach an agreement on specific institutional arrangements for producing a democratic government. Disagreements among Democrats over such issues as a unitary versus a federal state, a monarchical or republican form of government, or extreme disagreements about the type of electoral system may create questions about the legitimacy of an emerging democratic system and the decision-making process and the future of the political system. There has to be a certain determination about the procedures necessary for producing democracy.
Who heads the Republic of China's highest academic research institution, the Academic Senate. I feel very honored to be invited to make a speech, and the IMPR has generously given me 50 minutes. But I was just rudely informed by Sam Huntington that he did not know I was going to give a speech, and then he asked where the bus is. I told him I'd lock up the door. But I think it is a crime against humanity for anyone to give a long speech at such a nice hour of the day, especially you all have behaved so well today. So I'm going to cut my speech short. 48 minutes, okay? According to Chinese traditional thinking, it is not by chance that we all, our distinguished guests, having come from all corners of the world to meet here, that we can all meet here tonight. We have been brought together in Chinese philosophy by fate. So we should really treasure our meeting tonight, for we do not know if and when we would all meet again. This is not the farewell banquet, so I'll stop here. But on the other hand, we're all brought together here tonight also because of an important trait which we all share in common. That is, we're all champions of democracy. We strongly believe that only through democracy can we realize global harmony and achieve the well-being of mankind. We have therefore done our utmost to achieve this end, both in theory and in practice. The fact that this conference is held in the ROC demonstrates, I hope, your interest in and your affirmation of our success in democratic reforms. In fact, our 21 million people on Taiwan are eager to share with you and the world our 40-odd years of experience in implementing peaceful and rational democratic reforms. Our successful experience is, in short, the story of our quiet revolution. In his classic work, How Countries Democratize, Professor Huntington details the process of democratic change for different nations and the special characteristics of the first, second, and third wave democratized nations. While he categorized my country among the 35 third wave nations, I think it is a general consensus that the ROC stands out for its success in achieving political reform and outstanding economic development simultaneously. This is, I think, a success worthy of consideration. In case you haven't had the chance to go out on the streets and listen to the voices of the 21 million people telling you in their own words the story of our quiet revolutions, I would like to give you a condensed version of the story. In so doing, I will also fulfill my responsibility as a government spokesman, thus demonstrating also that truly there is no such thing as a free lunch or dinner. Knowing everything, nothing is free. What exactly are our quiet revolutions? You heard the president talk about it. You probably will hear other people telling you about it, this quiet revolutions. Sir Winston Churchill once said that great changes is seldom achieved without shedding blood, sweat, and tears. As we look back over our track record of the past years, we can see that aside from the economic miracle, which is familiar, I hope, to all, our major political, social, cultural, and media changes have all been carried out quietly, rationally, and peacefully, I think. Moreover, in our pursuit of progress and development, all levels of society have shed a great deal of sweat and tears, but there has been almost no violent conflict or bloodshed. While revolutionary in scope and significance, these changes were rational and peaceful. This is why we call them quiet revolutions. We use the word quiet because it implies the Chinese philosophical precept that something lasting can only be achieved quietly. Certain elements of our quiet revolutions, in particular political reform, are unprecedented in China's 5,000 years history and are thus regarded as the beginning of a new age. Some say the beginning of history. I hope Mr. Fukuyama is not here tonight. Or is he? Nonetheless, perhaps due to the absence of bloodshed and social turmoil, our achievements have not received much international press. We are trying to change the situation and gain your attention, but not just to secure your praise or encouragement. We sincerely hope the world community would come to know that we have achieved our democratic reform in a peaceful, steady, and progressive manner, a far cry from the widespread bloodshed or upheaval that have unfortunately plagued some other nations and areas during their transitions to democracy. The chief reason for our success comes from the perseverance, decisiveness, and hopefully vision of our leadership, the talent and efficiency of our technocrats, as well as the essence and solidarity of the entire citizenry. Thus, we have been able to complete our reform with balance rather than bullets, and through debate instead of battle. We emphasize our quiet revolutions not to flaunt our past or to bask in the glory of our achievements. Our quiet revolutions are still continuing, and our present task includes our effort to realize our goal of repaying the international community for the goodwill and assistance it has given us. To attain this objective, we believe we must return to many of the international organizations, including the United Nations. We call attention to our quiet revolution precisely to urge the world, the United Nations and the international community, not to overlook the existence of the 21 million people, nice people, in Taiwan, the Republic of China. Our nation is important, brimming with goodwill, and both ready and able to cooperate with the world. We hope to be accepted so that we can have the opportunity to contribute to and work for greater progress and harmony in the international community. I would also like to report that we have been publicizing the quiet revolution since 1992. We have received affirmation and support from major global media, think tanks, and academic institutions. Taking the global media as an example, over 2,000 reports have already appeared just on our efforts to return ourselves to the United Nations. Such wild coverage on a single issue regarding a place like Taiwan is rare and also unprecedented. Moreover, the great majority of these reports support our end, some expressing their endorsement through such high-profile means as editorials or commentaries. My colleagues and I, and our people, the 21 million of them in Taiwan, would work harder for our goals. We will not stop until we have reached our goal and rightfully return to the international community. To help you further understand our quiet revolutions and to cut short my speech, I'm providing for your reference a copy of this book called The Quiet Revolutions. If you don't promise to read them, I'll go on with the 40-minute rest of my speech. Make up your mind. A copy will be ready for you on your way out. But you don't have to read it tonight, still got a conference going tomorrow. Read it on your way home, flying. Help you to sleep. Well, lastly, I want to tell you, I do still hope that some force, someday, be it fate, good fortune, or our shared commitment to democracy, I do hope someday we will all meet again. Some force will bring us back together again in the not too distant future. I want to tell you, on behalf of the 21 million very nice people in Taiwan, that we found you charming and lovely, and we hope to see you all again soon. Before I end, I also want to tell you, this is the classical arrangement in typical evergreen fashion, a karaoke setting. If you have not seen any karaoke before, I think Hong Mao Tian would demonstrate right after me. And I think the other co-sponsor, the National Endowment for Democracy, either Carl or I think Larry would be quite happy to fulfill his job to keep you entertained in the non-conference section. That's almost basically his function, isn't it? Thank you all very much.
Tonight, I'm both honored and delighted that the conference sponsors have given me this opportunity on behalf of the ROC government to extend a hearty welcome both to all of you, distinguished foreign guests who have come from afar, and to our local representatives. The presence of all you highly respected members of your academic and intellectual communities and outstanding democratic leaders at a conference of this stature and magnitude not only speaks well for your personal reputations, but also assures the meaningfulness and value of what is being accomplished here. Unfortunately, my present schedule permits me to only spend a few minutes with you this evening. But since I see that you have yet to eat tonight, it may be just as well I saved the bulk of my thoughts to share with you at midday this coming Wednesday, when everyone can listen on a full stomach while seated. To very briefly summarize our experience with democratization here. When the third wave democratic movement started in 1974, Taiwan was still under martial law as a result of its military confrontation with the Chinese communists. Democracy in the ROC had already been nurtured for years through local government elections and education about democratic ideals at every level of the educational system. However, the ban on organizing political parties had not yet been lifted, and plans to transform Taiwan from an agricultural to an industrial society were still at an early stage. The economy was just preparing to take off. Per capita income was less than $900 US dollars, and foreign exchange was still under very rigid control. Today, 1 out of every 4 people in the Republic of China and Taiwan is enrolled in school. Popular education has greatly improved the quality of the workforce and produced a well-educated electorate, fully capable of handling its democratic responsibilities. More highly educated people now work for the government or private enterprise. People enjoy full freedom of speech, and information flows freely. 76 political parties have registered with the government at present time. Furthermore, per capita income has reached $12,000 US dollars, and the nation's foreign exchange reserves have now topped 100 billion US dollars. At present, the Republic of China is the world's 14th largest trading nation and a major source of investment in many countries. This is what the Republic of China has achieved on Taiwan, with a mere 36,000 square kilometers of land, about the size of the Netherlands, and a population of 21 million. So lacking in natural resources, the ROC on Taiwan has attained status as a modern, developed nation through diligence, perseverance, and adherence to the principles of freedom, democracy, and equitable prosperity. Thus, a democratic society in which all members are free of economic want and political fear, and in which power lies with the people, has been created on Taiwan. This state of affairs may be taken for granted in advanced democracies, but in an Oriental society with a long tradition of authoritarian rule, it has not come so easily. Today, elections have become an integral part of our life in Taiwan. Next year, ROC citizens will elect their president for the first time in China's 5,000-year history. It is one thing to have ideals, but quite another to be able to actually implement them. This is most possible when we have partners with whom to share and act upon such ideals. It is my sincerest hope that through the discussion and exchange of your expert opinions, this conference will prove highly productive for the people of the Republic of China on Taiwan, as well as for the entire world. That would be a perfect way to run out the democratic development of the 20th century. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let us toast the success of this conference, your good health and happiness, and the continuing successful democratization of our world. I shall see you again on Wednesday, and thank you very much. Toast to all of you participants and representatives.
One of the most distinguished political scientists in the world, and we've been having very, and I think we're coming to some conclusions about the nature of these critical, outstanding political scientists, colleagues of yours, in Africa and South Africa and democracy. And your country has served to help bring this community of politicians together. We want to thank you as well for gracing us this evening with your presence.
Please be seated. Say a few things about the staff. I have heard many complimentary words about this conference. It's not because of me, or Yunhan, or Larry, or Mark, or Mr. Gershman. Or you, if you want to, if you wish to think so, I don't mind either. But I do want to say that the executive director of Institute, Huang Huizhen, and many staff in the National Endowment, as well as INPR, as a whole, have been mainly responsible for all of the courtesies and nice arrangements that apparently you have not complained about so far. I particularly want to mention several names. In addition to Larry, Mark, Yunhan, and others, I say Mr. Lin Zupeng to my right. Manny, where's Manny? Now let's come to the most important part. Now today among the, and the Premier has given a speech that he has really given. So in that,
President Gershman, President Tian, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On Monday, it was my pleasure to give a reception to warmly welcome you here to Taiwan. On behalf of the government of the Republic of China. Today, as this conference draws to a close, I'm delighted to see you all once again. Before I went into government service, I was engaged in academic research. In my research and teaching, what interested me most was the theory of classical and modern democracy. During my tenure as chairman of the Department of Political Science at National Taiwan University and director of the Graduate Institute of Political Science, I made every effort to promote international academic exchange and cooperation, planned and held various international academic programs, and invited many world-renowned scholars to visit Taiwan. Many of the distinguished guests here today have been invited to Taipei before. It is nice to see so many old friends back in here again. This gathering not only is enjoyable, but also reminds me of my school days. The academic life, whether studying or teaching, has been indeed a happy experience for me. Even today, I often think of the inspiration and instruction that I received from my teachers here in the ROC and abroad. Three people familiar to you whom I shall never forget are Professors Frederick Hayek, Professors Leo Strauss, and Professor Hans Morgenthau at the University of Chicago. However, since I began public service, I have frequently regretted my inevitable remove from academic research. Nonetheless, this has in no way diminished my love or aspiration for it. After becoming a public servant, I found that what I learned in my years of study was extremely helpful to me, giving me a deeper understanding of the intricate link between theory and practice. Thus, I was delighted several weeks ago when I saw the conference agenda and roster. This conference is highly significant for my country and for me personally. I firmly believe in democracy and have taken part in promoting the democratization of the Republic of China. Thus, I am extremely delighted to see so many prestigious political scientists and world-respected leaders of nations which are undergoing the third wave of democratization gathered here in Taipei, sharing experiences in the pursuit of freedom and democracy, and assessing the challenges faced by newly established democratic countries. I'm confident that this conference will become an important milestone in the development of a world democracy and is bound to profoundly inquire inspire and influence the efforts of mankind to pursue freedom and democracy. I have read the materials for this conference in detail and witnessed through the local media the lively interplay and mingling of various opinions expressed by conference members. During the intensive discussions in the past 3.5 days, you have offered many learned views on such issues as the complementary relationship between democracy, social pluralism, and economic development, the influence of institutional reforms on the consolidation of democratization, and the operation of political parties, the relationship between the military and civilian sectors in newly established democratic system, as well as external factors that affect the development of democracy. Even though you could not reach consensus on all of these issues, you have proposed many important indices for our reference. I sincerely hope that once this conference is over, every one of you here today will cherish the experience of gathering here and intensify contact and communication with each other. President Li Denghui states in the opening speech, we also hope that meaningful institutional conferences such as this will be held here often. I would like to echo his remark and reaffirm our sincere desire to again host and support this kind of event. Let me again state clearly that this conference is just a beginning, and I hope to have another opportunity to get together with you here in Taipei. Of course, when we think about problems related to the third wave of democratization, the value and significance of democratic reform in the Republic of China on Taiwan is not limited to merely providing a meeting venue. The ROC's democratic achievement has not only dispelled the mistaken impression that traditional Confucian philosophy is incompatible with modern democratic ideas. It has also created a paradigm for the convergence and fusion of Eastern and Western civilization. During the modernization of our nation, traditional Confucian culture and such modern democratic concepts and institutions as free elections, popular sovereignty, representative politics, rule by law, and even free enterprise, a market economy, and open society have been organically combined, demonstrating unique vitality and adaptability. We could say that our experience with democratic reform in Taiwan represents a renaissance of Confucian culture, namely the remodeling and refinement of an ancient Oriental civilization and an extension of Western thought and institutions. This indicates how pervasively democratic precepts have gone beyond national boundaries and traditions. Secondly, the high degree of consensus for democracy shared by the people of Taiwan area is well worth noting. Strictly speaking, the impetus for Taiwan's democratic reforms mainly comes, as Professor Huntington has pointed out, from the active promotion of such by the ruling establishment. This is a transformation, not a replacement or transplacement type of model. However, among the experiences of democratic transformation in other countries, we rarely witness a case where during transformational reform, both ruling and opposition parties are equally as attracted to democratic change as here in Taiwan. We also rarely say a democratic transformational type experience that attempts a mix of centripetal and centrifugal forces, one impelling progress and the other seeking stability to the satisfaction of everyone. Perhaps it is because of this that the ROC's democratic reforms could be carried out so peacefully and smoothly without incurring too high a social cost. The third unique aspect of the ROC's democratic reforms is that our experience with reform in Taiwan may influence the political development of 1/4 of the world's population. While Taiwan's democratic transformation from one-party domination to multi-party competition is, of course, a successful example in the development of democracy around the world. It is even more a considerable impetus for the Chinese mainland to work at pursuing human rights and freedom. Who doubts that the 1.2 billion people on the Chinese mainland would identify with and want to enjoy the democratic achievements of the 21 million people on Taiwan? In fact, the more mature Taiwan's democratic system becomes, the more this will lead the Chinese mainland's political and democratic development in the right direction and instill greater confidence in the people on the Chinese mainland. Consequently, ensuring the autonomous development of the ROC's democratic system so that it can continue to serve as a beacon for the Chinese mainland not only is a hope shared by all Chinese people, but also deserves the support of democratic people everywhere in the world. At this juncture, I would like to point out that the 21 million people in Taiwan are not only very concerned about democratic changes in the Chinese mainland, Hong Kong, and Macau, but are also very mindful of democratic development everywhere in the world, especially the Asia-Pacific region. This springs not only from an unwavering stand for human dignity and an insistence on freedom and parity, but also from a hope for world peace and development. We cannot deny that the development of third-wave democracies was an important catalyst for the breakup of the opposing East and West Cold War blocs, and that the consolidation of third-wave democratic changes is directly related to the growth of a new world order during the post-Cold War period. The extension and upgrading of democracy throughout the Asia-Pacific region is especially important for regional peace and development. The Asia-Pacific region has had no specific experience with multilateral economic cooperation and lacks multilateral channels for discussing regional security. Accordingly, as the economic might of each country in the region increases and regional arms race gradually develop, it is increasingly important for defense policies and arms expenditures to be disclosed and for effective multilateral channels of dialogue to be set up. Nonetheless, whether this sort of multilateral security mechanism can operate in a stable and effective manner closely depends on the degree of democracy and openness in every Asian Pacific country. The more democratic a society is, the more likely it is to allow issues concerning national security and strategy to be discussed publicly. The more open a society is, the more likely it is to allow professional non-governmental organizations to carry out exchanges and cooperation on many levels and with their counterparts in other countries. This is the indispensable basis for building mutual trust throughout the region and a necessary means for building consensus on regional peace and development among the leaders of each nation. If democratic development in the Asia-Pacific region cannot be maintained, countries in the region will be unable to avoid the threat of military adventures, nor can they maintain optimism about their common future. Indeed, we cannot compromise over democracy. Otherwise, there is no guarantee for our future peace and stability. Looking ahead to the 21st century, I am very confident about the prospects for democratic development. We are living in an exciting new era when the trend toward market economics is worldwide. The impact of the information revolution has been extensive, and there are unprecedented opportunities for democratic development. We must not underestimate the enormous power of market economics to transform social structure and the political institutions. Following the failure of one planned economy after another, individuals who used to live under socialism inevitably gain more freedom of choice and economic autonomy, but also bear greater responsibility for deciding policies. This structural change eventually impels all of them to demand a richer quality of life and freer source of information, as well as inevitably greater opportunity to participate in politics to guarantee what they have. This is the greatest impetus for democratic development. Some believe that the information revolution will result in semi-direct democracy, while others think it will arrest democratic development and cause demosclerosis. However, I still believe that we cannot underestimate the corrosive influence the information revolution has on modern authoritarian systems. A monopoly on information has always been an effective tool of authoritarian rule. However, one heartening development of recent years has been the sudden explosion of communication and information technologies, giving people who were previously living in a hermetically sealed-off information environment, greater opportunities, and the wherewithal to break through the information iron curtain, shaking totalitarian rule to its very foundation. As we look around us, it is clear that with the aid of emerging communication and information technologies, individuals not only have access to greater amounts of open and unbiased information through such interference-free channels as the telephone, fax, satellite television, and computer networks, but also can utilize the speed, convenience, and accessibility of each kind of media to convey their own ideas and opinions, directly talking to each other of the global village to win their understanding and support. I am confident that the revolutionary advance of information technology will ultimately hasten the total collapse of authoritarian regimes and help set all mankind on a path to democracy. Naturally, the development of democracy still faces many challenges in the international community. However, I'm convinced that democracy will ultimately triumph. Although the outcome of this competition may no longer be in doubt, political scientists still have the responsibility to help more people, both the ruled and those ruling, understand the basic concepts of democracy and constitutional governance, as well as continuously think about and evaluate the shortcomings of our current democratic institutions. Those implementing political reform have the obligation to provide moral support and pass on their experience to people pursuing democracy everywhere in the world and help them correctly distinguish between the correct path and the obstacles to reform so that they can make the right judgment at crucial moment. Ladies and gentlemen, you have surely contributed your part to the historically significant third wave democratization reforms. During the 3.5 days of this conference, you have also once more provided your experience and suggestions concerning the development and consolidation of third wave democracy. I would like to express my heartfelt respect for your efforts and accomplishments. I'm quite certain that the future democratic world will remember well the efforts you have made here. However, I also sincerely hope that by the end of this conference, we will not merely be satisfied with what we have jointly accomplished to date, but we'll also have gained optimism and confidence to deal with the challenges we jointly face. Democracy is our common commitment for the world of tomorrow. Finally, I should like to again express my respect for the organizations sponsoring this conference and wish each and every one of you good health. And for those who have traveled far to be here, have a safe and happy journey home. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's exciting to contemplate working with them in the years ahead to strengthen the international community of Democrats and the intellectual foundations of democracy, we return to our homes intellectually invigorated and morally inspired. I want to thank you, and I want to toast to the Premier in endorsement of his idea that this is just a beginning, not an end, and that we will meet together in the future to further strengthen the idea of democracy. Thank you.
Dear friends, it's a pleasure and honor for me to address so distinguished audience. I'm sorry that I was unable to participate in your discussion yesterday about Russia and the Russian democracy. In the majority of the cases, I would agree with the ideas expressed in the paper presented to your conference by Mike McFaul. Not in all of the cases, but in the majority of the cases. I'm glad that your general solution, the general result of the discussion, absolutely coexists with my own statement that, of course, next elections, both parliamentary and the presidential, are absolutely crucial for the future of the Russian democracy. A few words why the fight for the stability of the democracy in Russia is so difficult, and why these elections are very important. Usually, the communist regime disappears in the intensive economic crisis, when all of the potential of the pleasant and the very pleasant solutions is exhausted, and the new, young, emerging democratic governments are left with the unpleasant choice of very unpleasant and unpleasant policies. They have to start their work with the price liberalizations, cutting of the subsidies, tax reforms, etc., cutting of the military expenditures, creating a lot of enemies and dissatisfied in the various strata of the population of the previously communist countries. These post-communist reforms are, first of all, the change, very radical change of the style of life, change of the social and economical position, change of the distribution of the wealth and the influence in the society, etc. And as it's very well known and understood, I think, by the citizens, the public reaction on this change is very much asymmetric. Of course, there are many problems that were most pressing in the previous Soviet Unions that are completely resolved now in Russia. For instance, any poll in the year 91 would show you that the problem that worries most the Russian population is the problem of the food supply, shortages, and lines. Now, you would not find these problems in any pool anymore. There is no such a problem. You don't have to wait in lines for a night to buy a kilogram of bread. You don't have to travel thousands of kilometers to Moscow to try to buy a kilogram of bad salami, etc. All of this is in the past. But it's only natural. Why it should be different? For instance, now for the Russian population, the realities of the post-communist economy is something from the very, very remote future. It was not with us. It was not we who waited for a few hours in lines. It is only natural that you can buy everything. It's only natural that your currency is convertible. It's only natural that you have a private sector in your economy, etc. But also, you are having a lot of problems. We are having problems of the increased inequality. We are having problems of the high inflation. We are having the problems of the less job security. We are having the additional problems with the crime, etc. And this is responsibility of the government. Somebody is winning in the reforms and somebody is losing in the reforms. If I'm winning because I'm hardworking, clever, and lucky. If I'm losing not because I'm lazy, drunkard, etc. I'm losing because of this terrible policy. And that means that the public reaction on this change, difficult change, is very asymmetric. If the problems are resolved, it's natural. You would not I would not tell thank you to the government which made what is necessary to do. But if the problems appears, it is the responsibility of the government. And that, of course, creates enormous possibilities for the opposition, for especially reformed communist parties, to get additional public support. Because in some very short period of time, they are irresponsible for anymore. They are getting the support and the satisfaction of the people in concrete policies and the concrete realities of the country. And then, of course, for the older generation, what is important, that they are strongly associated with the old times. Everything was good in the old times. We were young there. And that, of course, creates very serious possibilities for them. So it is not, of course, unexpected that in many post-communist countries, reformed communist parties are winning second elections after the start of the reform. It's more or less now well-studied phenomenon. In Russia, it is especially difficult to fight for the stability of the democracy because our position in this difficult age of transformation, from the point of view of the national problem, was quite different. For instance, in Poland, it was possible to promote difficult economic reforms of the year 90 because it was also the moment of the national independence. After the decades of the Russian domination, for the first time, Poland once again was the independent state. And you could address to the people and to tell them, well, you have to suffer, but you are suffering for the independence of Poland. You can do the same, for instance, in the Baltic states. You can do the same in many East European countries, etc. The new independence was enormous anesthesia for this help for these reforms. For Russia, the situation was absolutely asymmetrical. It was not the new independence. It was lost empire. It was additional problems of the Russians abroad. It was the huge possibilities for the radical nationalists to exploit the Weimar syndrome, to tell the stories how we were not defeated in the war, but we were betrayed, etc., etc., etc. So that means that the opposition has a possibility to combine the communist and the nationalist myths, making it quite a dangerous force.